Welcome, everyone. This is the session we want to discuss about how to deal with our nerves and self-doubt and negative thought and stress during your interview sessions and preparing your applications and applying for your jobs. My name is Dr. Yeon Chun. I am a postbac and summer internship program director at the NIH Office of Intramural Training and Education, and I am joined with our wellness advisor, Sarah Hunter. Sarah Hunter, would you like to talk a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Sarah. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. And as Yvonne already mentioned, I am a wellness advisor with the OITE team and feel really passionate about the topics that we'll cover today. Hope to kind of relay the message that you are not alone in feeling some of these kind of feelings of self-doubt and nervousness, but there are tools and ways to navigate it more effectively.
So we have thought about this session because NIH Graduate and Professional School Fair is coming very close, and it is a really exciting event, and over 300 institutions and programs, they are coming to NIH virtually to meet with the students and talk about their programs and provide resources. It is exciting, but as students, when we think about the event like this big event, we often have a lot of anxiety as well, and it can be overwhelming. So we want to have some conversation. So first, I want to ask, when we prepare or apply to graduate school or professional school or even job, and networking often can trigger imposter fears or intense feelings of self-doubt around our qualifications and knowledge and abilities. And what are some ways to address the thoughts and feelings that show up around our self-doubt?
Yeah. So I think at the core, imposter fears are really this deep-seated fear that we are not good enough, that we don't belong, and that's going to be found out. And so the way that we deal with imposter fears often kind of takes two paths. We tend to avoid taking risks, putting ourselves out there, having conversations with colleagues, with PIs, with other faculty, applying to schools that we really want to, because we have this core belief that we're not good enough, right? So we make ourselves smaller in order to avoid the potential of confirming this belief of failing, right? Of not succeeding. And then the other path that we tend to take in response to this is we overwork, we over plan, we take on perfectionistic tendencies, thinking that if we just get that next accolade or that next achievement, or we make it into this grad school or this med school, then we'll be good enough, right? And this feeling of self-doubt and these imposter fears will go away. Anyone that's ever experienced self-doubt knows that it doesn't just leave you once you kind of get that to that next step, right? Because it's really about these core beliefs and these thoughts that, when left unchecked, can lead to some unhelpful behavior patterns like I just talked about. And so really the most important thing that we need to do is begin to recognize what are those thought patterns that drive our self-doubt. So those are what we call automatic negative thoughts or distortions. And as the name implies, they're automatic. So they show up in times of high stress, and often they are subconscious, but we are responding to them behaviorally, right? So we are avoiding taking risks because we don't want to be found out, as imposter fears leads us to believe will potentially happen. And so what we need to first do is name them for what they are, right? So bring them to our awareness so that then we can begin to create alternative narratives that are more truthful and nuanced. So for example, right, if we're preparing for an interview, and the thoughts that comes up as we're preparing is, "Ugh, I don't have the qualifications. I'm not good enough. What's the point?" Right? We need to catch that, call that for what it is, and then create a more truthful alternative so we can build evidence for a more nuanced story. And I often people think that's just the positive alternative. Like, I am the best candidate, I'm qualified, but that's not what I'm talking about here, because that won't stick. That doesn't feel truthful. A more nuanced narrative, a way to challenge the automatic thought is to say, I have developed these skill sets and I have lots of things to still learn, but that's why I'm applying, right? Or these are the things I'm doing to develop the gaps in my knowledge. So it's again this more nuanced story of how we approach stressors, as opposed to the automatic negative thoughts that are all or nothing, or oversimplifications of who we are. And so really beginning to kind of challenge those thoughts. In the beginning, that's really difficult. It takes you have to be really intentional. So that requires sometimes writing down what is the automatic thought, and then what's a more nuanced way to see myself in this situation, and build kind of the evidence that says this nuance really is truthful, and it still maybe is uncomfortable and scary to take this risk to apply to the school, to have this conversation, but I am capable and I am equipped. And so it just takes some deliberate practice. And over time, what we know is that those automatic thoughts don't necessarily go away altogether, but they tend to show up less frequently, less intensely, and we can catch them quicker so that we can act more effectively in the moment when we're maybe feeling that stress and that self-doubt. Can respond from a more grounded and nuanced place.
And also Dr. Sharon Milgram from the Becoming a Resilient Scientist series we offer in our NIH and OITE, she often talk about the trick, putting the yet in the end of the sentence. So I'm not good at XYG skills yet, then you are still be capable and you can still develop those things and perfectly fine, right?
Yes.
So use those tips and practice those automatic response, and hopefully you can develop navigating skills to deal with this negative thoughts. It's a really lifelong process, and it doesn't end when you go into the medical school or graduate school.
Exactly, which is why, right, to fool ourselves to think that, once we get into that school, we won't have these self-doubts or we won't have these imposter fears is just silly. And so developing the skill set to kind of work on that now is really, really powerful. And you got at the growth mindset of this idea of using yet in our sentences, right? I don't have this skill set yet. With the implication that we have the ability to develop that. That's part of the professional development process, right? If we all showed up with all the knowledge and skills, what's the point of being here? So the growth mindset in engaging in this process is really powerful.
Thank you. So next, I want to ask some uncomfortableness around the networking. So reaching out to the faculty and others to build a professional relationship, as well as taking calculated risk with our career path, can be really uncomfortable because it puts us in a position to be rejected or to fail. And what are ways to handle the discomfort that comes with networking and applying to schools or new positions?
Yeah. So first, I just want to say that feeling of anxiety and nervousness is really normal. And often we feel like we're the only ones that maybe kind of have that discomfort because it's not something we talk about a lot. We don't want to admit that we are nervous, that we're afraid of failing or of being seen as, again, not good enough, right? That the imposter fears come back into this equation quite a bit. And so, first I just want to relay, I think that's a really normal experience. Often the way that people respond to that is they avoid engaging in those conversations then. And all that does is confirm our current belief system that we aren't good enough, that we will fail, right? And so it perhaps isn't worth even trying. And so I think kind of at the core, one really simple way to start to get at this is to really understand, why are you pursuing the path that you are? Because that can help you in the moment really choose to kind of be grounded in that perspective, choose that over the discomfort that you are going to feel when you're having new conversations. It can be hard to start those conversations with people who are well developed in the field. But when you feel kind of passionate or grounded in what you are pursuing, that can help you recognize that this is a discomfort that's worth feeling. So that's a simple way in the moment to kind of remember that it's okay to feel this and I can move through it because it's this important. So choose something that's important enough to you to move through that discomfort. The other kind of skill to think about is just the practice of having those conversations allows you to experience, right, what works for you, what didn't, and to experience potential missteps and failures, but yet you still persist and you still move on and it's not career ending, right? So it gives this chance to, again, it goes back to that growth mindset to fail or realize where you maybe need to make some adjustments and build some skills, but that doesn't mean that you can't keep moving forward and keep learning. I also think reframing our relationship with discomfort and with anxiety is really important piece of this. So our emotions are just pieces of information and that signal to us to pay attention to something that's important. And so when our anxiety shows up, that's usually a signal of like, oh, this is really important to me. I want to get this right. And so when we can relate to it in that way and almost kind of thank our body for saying, hey, listen to me, this is important, we can feel less overwhelmed by it and more empowered to kind of use some of that energy purposefully. And being able to recognize what those emotions are is an important part of that, right? So Lisa Feldman Barrett, a researcher from Stanford, has coined the term emotional granularity, showing that as we develop language to really understand and name how we're feeling, we become more equipped to deal with it in the moment more effectively, as opposed to get overwhelmed by our anxiety, or perhaps worse, to like completely avoid it altogether, which doesn't allow us the opportunity to engage in the ways that maybe are meaningful and important for us.
Thank you for sharing. I think the repeated concept now I'm hearing is self-awareness and awareness of the situation and practice. That reminds me, I mean, from the beginning of our life, we to learn how to do the math, like plus, minus, and multiplication, or riding a bike, or swimming, or instrument. Yes. Always practice is required to get better and to feel better. And I think networking, I feel like it is the same thing. To feel comfortable, to be easier with networking and handle with all those emotions, you need a lot more practice. I wish in our education system we have a subject, networking skills.
Yes.
This really comes with more practice. So hopefully our students can be able to find some peers and advocates, mentors that they can practice with and use this opportunity as a practice as well.
Exactly. Yeah, we would never ask ourselves to step in front of an audience and play an instrument we've never played without practicing, right? And so it would be silly for us to expect ourselves to be able to perform in an interview without ever really engaging with kind of the stress that entails and both the hard and soft skills that it requires to do that well. And so I think you're getting at such an important point, that practice being with the discomfort, right? Practice the actual skills first with people who you feel safer with, or who you feel more comfortable with, and then kind of building, we call that building our hierarchy of tolerance, right? So we get a little bit more comfortable each time we do it, right? It doesn't necessarily mean it's ever completely easy, but we do build our tolerance for that discomfort, which allows us to engage with it a little bit more effectively each time.
And so in the same line, I also want to ask, nervousness can sometimes hinder our ability to be present in the moment and engage in interviews or conversations effectively. I just made a joke with her before starting this session because I'm also very nervous typically, and I am not a big fan of speaking with any other people. I'm a big introvert. But what are some ways people can deal with nerves in the moment?
Yeah, this is a question I get a lot, and people often share that the advice that they've been given is just calm down, just be yourself. And as we all know, never
So
never
far.
that simple, right? And the more we tell ourselves to calm down, the more worked up we often get, because that is really just putting added pressure. And so I like to think about this in two really distinct ways. So one is coming at it from what's called a top down approach. And so that's more of what we've been talking about. So that's more of the kind of cognitive skills that require some prep leading up to an interview or a conversation. And so that's thinking about what are the distortions that you are prone to in times of high stress that might show up, right? So if you're in an interview and someone maybe asks you a question you don't know, that can trigger some of those distortions, those automatic negative thoughts like, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not qualified enough. So if you already know that about yourself, going back to that self-awareness piece, you have already done the work of beginning to counter that distortion so it doesn't show up so intensely in that moment. And so I think continuing again to really call out those distortions, create alternative narratives is a piece of this and will help you in the moment, but that requires kind of proactive work. The other kind of top-down approaches are visualizing, truly visualizing yourself engaging in the interview, and not or the conversation or the whatever it might be, and not just as if it's happening perfectly, but imagine being caught off guard. Imagine it not going perfectly and still navigating it, right? What tools will you lean on in that moment? How will you calm your body? Which we'll get to next. But the visualization can kind of give your mind and your body practice to also feel that discomfort, right, beforehand. And then the bottom up approaches. So those are the more kind of the cognitive based approaches.
Mhm.
The bottom up approaches are regulating your body, and these are what we use in the moment, because I like to say we need to calm our bodies so our mind can do the good work it knows how to do already, right? What we know is that in times of high stress, our sympathetic nervous system can get activated, which kind of creates, right, it increases our heart rate. That's what causes tension in our hands and cortisol pumping through our body. And when that goes unregulated, that can begin to shut down our prefrontal cortex, where the higher order reasoning, the thoughtfulness, the planning really takes place. And so it's hard to engage in critical conversation when that is not operating optimally. And so what we know we need to do in those moments, so in the moment when nerves are taking over, is not try to kind of think of a better answer, to think how you need to calm down, but is to simply breathe, right? That's the most effective way we know how to calm our body and activate our parasympathetic nervous system. And so some common techniques are 4-7-8 breathing. And what that is you breathe in for a count to 4, you hold for 7, and release for 8. When we take inhales that are double the length, when our exhales are double the length of our inhales, it helps activate our parasympathetic nervous system quicker. So even if it's like breathing in for 2, release for 4, right? And everyone is breathing all the time. So like this isn't something that's going to necessarily look weird, but just taking a moment to truly take a deep breath and calm your body helps activate your parasympathetic nervous system. The other one is called the physiological sigh, where you take a deep breath in, and then you take another deep breath in before releasing
Mm.
and release. So it mimics kind of a sigh that we do naturally as a way to kind of reassert focus and calm our body. So breathing, much like any skill though, I encourage people to not call on this in the moment if they've never practiced it before, right? So think about kind of practicing these breathing techniques outside of moments of high stress, so your body has had the opportunity to have done it before. You're more likely to have success in the moment. Other things in the moment, if you're finding that you're just overwhelmed with nerves, is to ground your body in the present. And the best ways we know how to do that are through our senses. And so there's a variety of techniques, but a common one is called the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding skill. And the order does not matter, and you don't even have to use all your senses, but you see 5 things that or you notice 5 things that you see in the room, 4 things that you hear, 3 things that you can touch, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. If that feels like a lot, which it often does in the moment, it's okay to just notice, like, okay, what are 2 things that I see in the room, 1 thing that I hear? Or if you're really tactile, having kind of something in your hand that, right, isn't noticeable, that can be a reminder of, like, I'm here in the moment, I'm prepared, just as a way to signal the present moment. Right here in this moment, I'm safe and I'm grounded. The other is just to notice, like, your posture, right? So often for me, when I get stressed or overwhelmed, I can tend to, like, clench and my shoulders move in. And so when I take a deep breath, it often helps me recognize how much I've, like, been clenching. And if I just sit back and firmly plant my feet on the ground, it's again a way to just bring myself back to the present. So those are really quickly just some simple but practical tools to bring your attention back to the moment, to regulate your body so your mind can do what it already knows how, right? You have done the preparation leading up to this interview. You have been thoughtful of how you want to present yourself in this conversation, right? So now all you need to do, if you've done the prep work, which you have control over, then all you need to do is control kind of activate your parasympathetic nervous system, regulate your body so your mind can do what it does.
You're sharing all these very handy tips our students can practice and prepare themselves for the situation. But one thing sticking in my mind is breathing techniques, and I've heard a lot of these things all the time, and they all come with a different numbers. Like,
Yeah, no.
you mentioned 9 for 9, but I think your point was having like exhaling time longer than inhaling time. And no matter what you choose, whatever numbers students can choose, I think they can just remember that things. And also, again, the repeating concept is you need to practice when you are feeling good. So when you are in a hard moment, you can automatically respond to that stress.
Exactly.
So this will be our last questions. And after speaking with the recruiters, interviewing, or networking, how can you hold a space for the stress, for the uncertainty around the outcomes of the processes, and identify the next steps?
Yeah. I think this is one of the hardest times. Like, we talk about all the nerves leading up to preparing for grad school interviews and applications, but sitting with the uncertainty of waiting for a response after you've maybe emailed someone, or obviously a responsive application or a job, is heavy. And so often what we see happen in these times is people either get caught in intense anxiety or worry, which is kind of projections of future outcomes, right? We try and imagine all the future outcomes, or rumination, which is getting stuck in what has already passed. So replaying what all the things that we said and we think we did wrong, right? So we kind of oscillate between these two spaces of the future and the past, where neither place we have control. And so I first just ask people to think about, what in this moment do you have control over? And sometimes it's as simple as, perhaps you can follow up with an email, but But more often than not, it's simple things like, how are you taking care of your mind and your body and your soul, right? So very simple things. Are you nourishing, moving, and resting your body? Are you connecting with others? So general self-care in times of this uncertainty is really, really important. Other things that can be really helpful is to create what I call anchoring routines or rituals in our days. So typically, I encourage people to think about a morning and an evening. When we are in times of uncertainty or waiting, we can become highly rigid or highly chaotic, right? And everything goes out the window. And so when we have these anchoring routines, it's helpful to signal to it's regulating for our body. It's also predictability in a time where there's maybe not a lot of predictability. And this is also a time to really think about who are my supports that I can lean on, that I can process some of these stressors with, that maybe can help bring joy to my life. So I don't love the word distraction because I don't think that's helpful, but again, really engage with other parts of who I am other than this one outcome that I'm waiting on can be really, really powerful. And so those are kind of some of the main tips or things to think about is where do you have control and focus your energy there. Seek support from people you trust and who are safe, and then create those anchoring rituals or routines in your life. Also, there's Adam Grant's research talks about this really kind of cool idea of incorporating mastery, mindfulness, and mattering into your days. And this is helpful in times of uncertainty because mastery is a task. It can be as simple as completing the dishes every night to starting to learn a new instrument or developing a new skill at work or pursuing a larger goal. Mastery helps kind of focus our minds in purposeful ways during times of uncertainty. Mindfulness is this idea of just being present in the moment without judgment. And we can do that in simple ways like just beginning to kind of pick one thing that we do mindfully each day, like brush our teeth. Notice how it feels. Notice what it smells like, right? So just bringing us to the present moment, again, because uncertainty takes us to the future or brings us to the past, both places where we don't have impact. And then the other one is mattering. And I really like this because when we are focused on kind of waiting for an outcome, waiting for a response in this place of uncertainty, we can get tunnel vision and we can lose sight of the world happening around us, of taking a larger perspective. And so mattering is thinking about what are ways that I can contribute to those around me in even just small ways, right? It can be as simple as calling a friend when they come pop into your mind, or picking up trash around your neighborhood, whatever it might be, right? That's a very personal, figuring out what helps you create a sense of mattering, helps widen our perspective, because uncertainty can often create tunnel vision for us. And so I really like those concepts just as ways to reorient some of our energy and kind of guide some of the anxiety or stress that we feel in times of uncertainty.
When often we are in that moment, it is hard to remember all of these things.
Yeah.
And when those things are passing, much later we realize, okay, that was nothing. I mean, there's many, many more important events out there. Yeah, so focusing on the present and thinking about what you can control, and always reaching out to your advocate and community, and being in a community and support system, and thinking about how you take care of yourself usually, and then remember all those things at the moment. I think those are all good tips. This summer, OIT, we are doing campaign, I take care of myself, and we are collecting all those pictures, and we will share that as a video and the final product later this summer. So hopefully people can contribute, and they can also see how others take care of themselves, and they can add on those things on their list as well. But thank you for sharing all those tips and your insight, how we can take care of ourselves, our nerves, how to control and manage our stress, and how we can take care of ourselves during this difficult time. Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think just to an extension of what you're saying, Dr. Milgram often says in order to do well, we have to be well. And so while I gave many tips today, sometimes it's as simple as thinking, right, what do I need to do today to take better care of myself? And so not overthinking some of these things, not making this an added stressor, incorporating all these skills, because again, you're not alone, right? We've all experienced anxiety and nervousness and misstepped. We've all failed in our own ways and have had self doubt. These are just some ways to navigate it, but you aren't alone. So keep reaching out to your supports, reach out to OITE. I would love to meet with you, but also, right, find what works. Sometimes just simplifying it can be really powerful because in order to do well, we have to be well. And that looks a bit different for all of us.
Thank you so much for sharing all those tips and talking with me today. I hope this session is helpful for
Yeah.
many, many of our students out there. And we are looking forward to have a great event. Thank you.
Thank you.